Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Your Town Matters. I'm joined today by the Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thank you for being here today, Brad.
It's great to be back. It's been a couple months.
It's been a couple months and a busy summer as well in town.
It has.
I'd love to start off by talking about the August council meeting, specifically to start the courthouse and the report that was brought forth by heritage consultant Bill Hicks, who had consulted with the community and then also brought some ideas for repurposing to the table. Can you give everyone at home an overview of how that went and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, absolutely. So the town of St. Andrews is the owner of the courthouse, and we've basically been sitting on it for a few years. It was a decision made by the previous council, and really there was I guess you could say a finite resource in funds that were provided by the province of New Brunswick, and those funds are starting to deplete to the point where the taxpayer is going to start paying for the courthouse. So we brought Bill in, Mr. Hicks, to consult with the public, as many people as possible, and make some recommendations on what the courthouse could be. And really, council had, you go meet. We have no way of any way thinking which way it should go, but we did kind of indicate that status quo wasn't something that we were looking for. The reality of the situation is, if you look at the cost of running that courthouse, even a paint job for it is over $100,000. And when you look at some of the things that need to be done and plus the heating bills and everything, it's safe to say that over the next 10 to 12 years, it wouldn't be surprising if the taxpayer, if they did inherit it, would have to spend about $1 million a year on that building. And that's a lot. So Mr. Hicks met with a number of people in the community. I will say primarily people that are involved with heritage type organizations and historic organizations in the community. And he came back with a report that kind of gave a summary of what the courthouse is. He did meet with a number of people. He did a survey. And what really came back is that the courthouse should continue to be owned by the town of St. Andrews. There was a proposal that the wings of it get not rented out, but given or rented to not-for-profits like the Archives, like the Civic Trust, like the Legion. And the middle of it would be almost like an event space where we tear all the assets down, put them into storage when we need to use it, and then bring them back out. We might have to set up a stage in there. And I will say that although I'm very appreciative of his consultation with these groups, I don't think it was what I was personally looking for, and I don't think it was what council was, because really, if you get down to it, it's about being sustainable. And if you have a courthouse in your possession, you want to take proper care of it, but you also want to make sure that it's truly used for community use. And with that model that was proposed before us, I actually don't see any way in which there's a financially sustainable model. It would be 100% paid for by the taxpayer for the most part. Very little rent. Most of those organizations cannot afford rent. And as far as event space, with aging volunteers, I have a hard time visioning them taking down the rails, taking all the chairs, setting up a stage, putting it in a little storage room. I personally could see those assets getting dented. And I just think the labor around it, if you're paying someone to tear it down every time, I just don't see the financial model behind it. So, I appreciate the efforts, but I don't think we've necessarily found what we were looking for as a municipality yet. So it'll be an ongoing conversation, but council kind of took that right now and they're digesting it. And I'm sure you're going to see some conversations in the future on what that could be, whether it be that model or another one. But council's reaction was, there was never that aha moment, like that's what we should use it for.
So it's still a significant expense to the average taxpayer would be.
It would be. Like the funds are starting to dwindle down. I would say as early as probably the beginning of 2025, it'll actually start really costing the taxpayers money. So when we got the building from the province, they gave us a portion of funds which would help operate it for a number of years, and that is, like I said, that's starting to go down. And yeah, the real concern is we've got a number of heritage assets in the community, the Ross Museum being a great one. There's a bit of a trust fund there, but the town, the taxpayer, subsidizes it quite heavily. We do have the Sheriff Andrews, which we're fortunate to get some money from the province. We have the Blockhouse, which we have money from Parks Canada, but this one would be 100% paid for by the taxpayer of St. Andrews right now based on that model.
Now, it's obviously a beautiful heritage building, a huge part of our history. There are a number of us, I would even say myself included, who would love to see it as a courthouse again. Is that a discussion that could still be on the table?
That's the best suggestion I've heard in the community. So when you have an asset like that, there's a certain amount of due diligence you want to do. You want to make sure that you are respecting the heritage of it. But if you look at Charlotte County right now, and you look at what's happening around the crime and some of the concerns that are expressed to the community, actually Mayor Alan McEachern, we talked about kind of the inconvenience of the courthouse being in St. John, and of course the fact the officers are traveling back and forth. But the other thing that he brought to me that I never thought of is there is some value in, if you steal from a neighbor or you do something against a neighbor, there is some value in being in the courtroom and looking at the people that you're impacting their lives. And when it's in St. John, what we're seeing is that doesn't happen as often. So he doesn't feel that community accountability is happening, and I never thought of it that way. So yeah, to purpose it, but you know, there is some concerns. There would be minimum security requirements that are probably you have to have now. So I don't know much about the viability of it, but to be honest, to use that courthouse as a courthouse makes a lot more sense than any other idea I've heard so far. So,
yeah.
But that would take probably the province of New Brunswick to actually make that decision. So, it is a good option.
On that note, I know that what Mayor McEachern was saying, Ken Stanix, the mayor of McAdam, says the same. When there's a trial, he tends to bring people from the community to the courthouse. They make a group effort for that exact reason that you put forward, but it does, to a lot of people, seem to be a courthouse in our community could play an important role once again, especially with, like you said, the rise in crime. I know that St. Andrews doesn't always feel it the same way as other communities. What is your sense from talking to citizens, though, on crime levels in this particular town?
So I actually think it is increasing. I actually had a pretty interesting, I guess you could say, interview series with Superintendent Andy Leclerc, and it's with no disrespect at all, but he was referencing policing services in our area being excellent, and that is not what I was hearing in the community. So we definitely had some back and forth within the media. But I will say that crime is increasing, and I will say the unsheltered population of St. Andrews has increased. We had a number of people that were not from the community that have traveled in this summer. Some of them are no longer in the community. And I'm not saying everyone that's unsheltered commits crimes, but the two individuals that brought to my attention within the community, both right now are they're innocent until proven guilty, but they are before the court. So they've both been removed, but I am seeing an increase in crime, seeing an increase in drug use, and then there's also an increase in people that are not originally from our community that have just kind of moved here, and theft is the big one that we're seeing the most, right? So I'm seeing an increase. I will say that we had a meeting with the RCMP sergeants, both for the St. Stephen and St. George detachment. Those are the two main bases in our area. And it was a very positive meeting. So normally what happens when we get together with the RCMP is we read reports, and these reports we get, we can read those ourselves. You don't need to say this is how many occurrences of this are. So instead, we kind of threw the script aside and we said, let's have a real conversation about things we can do to improve. And I can honestly say last month, we have seen some improvement in whether it be perception or actual police service. I think everybody in the Charlotte County will notice that there has been an increase. And one of the things that we really want to hit home is when they do make an arrest, it's so important that they get the information out there, because people honestly believe that when they do call the police, nothing happens. And I can't say every time something does happen, but there are arrests being made. And the more the public is aware of that, the more likely they are going to be to call in. So yeah, we had a number of action items, and they gave us some really good information of things that we need in the community. We don't have a mobile crisis unit. There's a lot of places across New Brunswick that have that. So if you have a mental health call, they can access that resource. Our officers are tied up with it for hours, and that's a disadvantage for them. We talked about the courthouse earlier. There's a lot of factors and things that we can do better. And I do say that although I've been critical on RCMP, hold myself and council accountable too. I know it's kind of a provincial policing contract for a lot of communities, but we should be part of the solution. So whether it be more cameras, whether it be something that's hindering them from having eyes in the community, like, come to us and we should be accountable with you. And that was a really good meeting, and I hope it's just the start of a quarterly meeting that we really do talk about specific actions, because I have seen improvement the last month.
And I know you were at the RSC 10 meeting with the RCMP as well, with other mayors and councillors from across this region, and repeat offenders was one of the main things that I think all the mayors agreed on should be brought to the forefront for the RCMP to consider.
It should be, and it's not just it's good that you say that. It's not just an RCMP problem. It's a justice system problem. You have people that are living in our communities that time and time again have stolen things from items. They've broken the law in different ways, and they get before the courts and the judge, and they get a slap on the wrist, and they're back in the community. Sometimes the day they get arrested, they're released, and or at least the following day. And I got to feel for the RCP officers. You put all this time and effort into an investigation, you apprehend your suspect, and the courts let them go, and you put all this effort into it. So it's got to be disheartening. So there's so many elements to what's happening when you talk about crime and drugs. Is yes, it's the courts, yes, it's the police, but it's mental health services, it's addiction services. We are under-resourced here in southern New Brunswick, and we are starting to see that catch up with us. When you look at things like drug use, like meth, like it started in BC, but you could see it come across Canada. Like British Columbia was battling this a decade ago, and it just worked its way across the country, and now we're starting to see the outfall of it all. So it's all related. It doesn't mean that if you're unsheltered that you're doing drugs. It doesn't mean you're a criminal. But when you put these factors together, there is some common themes where there is some cross between each of these categories. So to be honest, we're lucky it's not worse, because I don't think that we're equipped to deal with the challenges that we have before us. So it's going to be a long battle, unfortunately.
And another hurdle and challenge right now is housing. That seems to be an international issue. St. Andrews has been known for being quite progressive with the ideas that have been coming forward in the community. What is happening right now in terms of, I know there was a new rooming house that was that is being put together on Reed Avenue? Yeah,
right across from the old clubhouse of the Algonquin. Yeah, so that would have been, a lot of people know that as the veterinarian place, because that's what it was when I grew up in the community. But it's a large home, and then a local investor and resident now made the decision that he was going to purchase it, and he was going to turn it into accommodations for his staff. And we've seen that with other places in the community as well. So it does have to be rezoned, and that process is going away. Council has had a hearing of objections and first reading. Nobody actually spoke at the hearing of objections. So coming up at the September September council meeting, I think you're going to see second and third reading go in the same meeting. So that's a good opportunity. He will have an employee that lives at the address to make sure that the main concern would have been parking, noise. Parking he's addressed in the back, and this should be noise, where he has an employee that is responsible to make sure that it doesn't disrupt any neighbors or anything like that. So very optimistic that one will probably go through, but that'll be the will of council at that particular time.
Some homeowners in the town plat are also building what I call granny suites on their properties as well, to be a part of the solution, though on the flip side there is concern that this could overly densify the town plat. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there is zoning regulations that are in place that has set up certain criteria in order for you to do that. Like, you can only have an accessory building a certain size of your lot. So there is restrictions in place, but I think if we look at our community and the fact that we're an aging community, and you look at people looking to age in place, I think the reality is people adding what they call a granny or a nanny suite in behind. If it's not visible from the road and it fits on the lot, I don't actually see what the challenge is with it, because if I had an aging parent that needed a place to stay and I need them close by, and I look at my personal property, I think I have enough space to do it, and I think that it should be something that we look at. And if you look at the costs of community, so every time you see the town go to tender on a new road or new sewage line, the costs are through the roof. So if you have more residents in that area, you're able to actually have the exact same amount of feet of road, the exact same amount of feet of sewage and water lines. It makes, the more density an area is, the more affordable it is to live there. So is there a balance where you don't want to alter the look and feel of St. Andrews? I've said it time and time again. Yes, but I really don't think someone who has a proper lot size that decides to add a little unit onto the back, or even a separate building that's above a shed, I really don't see how that's taking away from anyone's livelihood. And of course, it gives them the opportunity to have a loved one potentially live on their property with them. So they're case by case. A lot of those go in front of the Planning Advisory Committee because they need variances and things like that. Very rarely do we see those before Town Council.
Another variance, I suppose, that made headlines this year was in Shamcook, which is now a part of St. Andrews, and it had to do with a lobster facility at the end of Old St. Andrews Road. There was supposed to be part 2 of a hearing here at the W.C. O'Neill Arena, but that's now been put into the PRAC's hands. Can you highlight what's happening now in terms of whether this variance will be approved to change what would have been, I guess it would be to allow the oh my gosh, I'm going to get the terms wrong, industrial.
You got it.
At the end of Old St. Andrews Road for them to operate this lobster holding facility.
Yeah, so the PRAC at the time, at that particular time, Shamcook and Bayside were not part of St. Andrews. So the PRAC, well within their authority, made the decision that they were going to grant the variance. It was appealed, and the decision of the appeal is that it would go back before PRAC, but in reality, since now that we're Shamcook, Bayside, St. Andrews, one community, that's now managed by the PAC. So that'll be going in front of the St. Andrews PAC. I just got confirmation of that at the end of last week, so just I guess you could say 1 business day ago. I don't have a date of when that's going to happen, but basically, from my understanding, is it'll be represented, and the PAC, which is a different committee than the PRAC, will take a look at the interpretations of the bylaw, the variance, and make a decision. So what it appears on the outside is the appeal board said, take another look at it, and then make your decision. And that's what it feels like. So more to come. There is a number of residents that are engaged in this file, following it closely, and as is the business itself. But as far as the process, I've never seen it before, so this is the first time it has, and kind of unique when the PRAC made the decision. Now it's before the PAC.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sure everyone will be following that one, including yourself.
To simplify it, I suppose it comes down to whether this is heavy industrial or light industrial. If they consider it light industrial, it will be allowed. If it's considered heavy, it's a no-go?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things, if you look into the actual kind of the definition is it gives reference to property cannot emit sound or odor and all these other things. Lighting's a factor, and I think it's just a matter of PAC weighing in to find out if this fits the definition or not. Either way, I'm going to stay out of it. That's their decision. I'm really happy as a town and as a mayor. We thought that there should be a little bit more consideration done for the residents in the area, and that's what's happening now. So whatever they decide, definitely within their authority and their decision, and I'm sure either way there'll be a party that is happy with it, and unfortunately a party that is not happy with it. So.
A big change since we last spoke is that the Algonquin has changed ownership. Can you tell us a little bit about the new owners and how you see that maybe impacting the town?
So this was, it was Invest Hotels is who purchased it, as you know. And it seemed like last year there was a lot of momentum behind it and it was going to happen. And then I just heard nothing. And then all of a sudden it was back. So Invest, I've had the opportunity to meet with them several times. And I can tell you it is an exciting opportunity. They are looking to, no pun intended, invest in the hotel. And what's really exciting is it's their plans to tell, but they are really going to be looking at providing services and amenities to the hotel that make it a year-round destination. And I think that's really exciting for the community. We know July and August, it's pretty busy. Right now, we know it's the hotel is got a steady flow of people, but to have it busy year round would be such a wonderful opportunity, not just for the hotel, but the entire community. There's a lot of businesses in the downtown. Some make the decision to close. They go away on holidays, they want to close. But there is some businesses that would stay open longer if they had the business model to do so. And a healthy Algonquin, we know, is a healthy St. Andrews, and vice versa. A healthy St. Andrews is a healthy Algonquin. So a lot of excitement to come. The new ownership group really seems like they're passionate. Some of them even have connections. One of their key managers actually got married at the hotel, used to be a bellman there, as did I. But yeah, they're looking at a number of things. And what's really exciting as well is one of their first investments will be into the employees there. They really want to look at employee experience when they work at the Algonquin. And I think that that's a very wonderful first step. So more to come.
And I hear that they are quite thrilled to have a golf course as well. That's one of the main draws for them to this community.
I think it's the first in their portfolio. So they own like dozens and dozens of hotels. I think it's their first golf course. So it's pretty exciting. I do know that some of the management's coming to town. I've got the opportunity to kind of go for dinner with them, and I think they even want to play a round of golf while they're in town. So I don't get a lot of golfing in, but this last week, all of a sudden, there's lots of golf tournaments in the community. I've golfed more this last week than I have the entire year. So yeah, 'tis the season. But in speaking of the golf course, it is now ranked in the top 20 golf courses in Canada, and they've slowly been climbing up the rankings. And when you've got a top 20 golf course in your community, that is an asset that the Algonquin and their management invest should be exploring.
And just because I know I'm involved in this, I'll keep that open to everyone. But Katie's Cove has also had some improvements lately. You are coming to the launch of the new washrooms and change rooms this week.
Looking forward to it. Yeah. So Katie's Cove, it's kind of been talking about restoring it for a while, but to actually see all the effort and the work that organizing and volunteer committee has been doing to actually put new assets down there, so a brand new washroom facility and change room, I think it's really going to be exciting. And I could say that if you drive down there in the evening, there is people down there all the time right now, even without those facilities. So as we look at how warm and humid it's been this summer, it's either been raining or really hot, to have an asset that we can all be proud of in the community that's around water. It is a gap. We have a lot of good offerings, but we don't have a lot of offerings that actually involve water. Don't have a splash park. That's our only beach. And the fact that it was where it was, 8 years ago versus where it is now, we're moving in the right direction.
And on the topic of water, I want to talk about a little bit the wharf and Market Square. And there were plans in place, but I know inflation has played a role in where we're at now. Can you give us an update?
It has. So a lot of people are like, what's going on? We heard these stories 3 years ago. And what happened is the municipality, through both levels of government, both the provincial and federal, was able to get funding to repair the wharf. And there's a consultation period that you have to do as a council, but there's also other consultation you need to do. We had to do a study on what birds would be impacted underneath the wharf, First Nations consultation. There is a process that we should do and we want to do, but what happened over the course of that is during the pandemic is we saw costs skyrocket through the roof. So originally the provincial and federal portion, those are locked in. So what you saw is a difference of almost $2 million extra the municipality would have had to pay if we just jumped at that deal. So what we did is we went back to the provincial and federal government and said that that whole proposal we had for that much money doesn't work anymore. And unofficially, we've got them where they're going to be committing more. So you're going to see that topic start to get a lot more conversation. Personally, I've got some of my own ideas. I hope to share them at another time. That I really think that there's bigger opportunities there as well. But right now, the council will be talking about those different options, whether it be wood and concrete, and even the rock that the community was very vocal on last time. They're going to look at all options again because we have 3 new councillors that were not part of the process last time, and for that matter, the current council was on. Those were decisions by the previous, so it needs to be properly weighed out. But they all now have a basic background of what happened, so you're going to see more conversation.
As we look ahead towards fall, I know sometimes in St. Andrews it's happy to look towards fall. It's a little quieter, and many of us love that. What's on the horizon?
Well, the topic of the last little while has been Indulge Festival, because the tickets went on sale, and basically I have a dotted line for myself to indulge, simply the fact that Kingsbury Garden is the one that funded it when it was in rebuilding phases, and we manage the finances behind it. That being said, that every dollar we make goes to the food bank. But the challenge we have has always been the Friday night sells out instantly. Everyone wants to go to the same event, and although it seems like a big event, the reality is it is only about 1,000 people, 700 to 1,000 people that can participate, and the reality is you could sell it out 10 times over. So more and more people are getting frustrated. But what we saw this year is every single event sold out instantly. The concert sold out the day of. The Harvest Feast sold out. Like every ticket, dueling pianos. So literally, if you go on to the page, maybe the Hike for Hunger, if they're selling tickets, you might be able to. But all the ticketed events just sold out. So as much as it's frustrating, you got to be proud. It's exciting. I know there's a balance. There's residents that say, our summer's all about tourists, but this is the one event I wanted to go to. I get it. But in the same sense, a lot of the grants that make that festival possible are coming from tourism grants. So without the tourists, you might not have the resources to actually put on such an event. So there is a balance there, but it is a good news story. I know people are frustrated, but it's a success. And to think how quick it sold out is pretty amazing. And myself, the other one I've circled is the Dragon Boat Festival, the Regatta. I have a team of 16, my hockey team, the Walwig Warriors. I'm already asking where we take our picture with the trophy. I'm feeling pretty confident, but to be down at Katie's Cove with a new washroom, it's going to be exciting, and that's another one. But there's so many more events to do here.
I will say my personal favorite is Pumpkin Fest at Kingsbury Garden. There's something about the pie eating contest that, who knows, it might be my year to enter.
Yeah, we actually ended up recruiting a pie eating champion. He's on our staff now, so maybe it was his interview without realizing it. But it's a lot of fun, and we always get one of the biggest pumpkins in the province. And last year we had the biggest in the province, and you guess the weight of it. But it's just a feeling in the air. It's good for family fall photos, and there's so much. Oktoberfest at the Sayers Brewing Company, like there's still a lot of things left to look forward to. And of course Broadway by the Sea, which is happening this month as well. I'm personally excited for that with Tony and Courtney Lepage. We're
starting to not have a shoulder season. It's just a year-round destination.
It is, and that was the goal, right, is really to build your shoulder season so all the businesses succeed. And I felt like it was slower to start the year between the forest fire and the 45 straight days of rain we got, but the weather has turned around quite significantly, and the downtown is jam-packed on most days, so a lot to be thankful for.
Well, this message goes out to people at home. If anyone's interested in starting a Halloween committee, I am game for that. I can't
believe you want to be on another committee. You're on like every committee going. Good for you.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Brad, and I look forward to next time.
Thank you. I only miss Maud. That's the only problem today.
I'm sure she'll come out. My guest today has been Brad Henderson, Mayor of the Town of St. Andrews. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Your Town Matters.